I never thought a family dinner could change my entire life. But that cold November evening in Chicago, with snow starting to fall outside our parents' old brownstone, everything I thought I knew about respect, family, and love got turned completely upside down. My name is Sarah, and I'm 26 years old. I work as a kindergarten teacher at Lincoln Elementary on the south side of the city. I've always been the simple one in my family. While my older sister Jessica climbed the corporate ladder, I found joy in teaching 5-year-olds how to tie their shoes and read their first words. Our parents raised us with strong values in our modest 2-bedroom house. Dad worked double shifts at the steel mill, and Mom cleaned offices downtown to make ends meet. They taught us that hard work and kindness mattered more than money or status. Jessica, though, seemed to forget those lessons the moment she got her business degree from Northwestern. She landed a management position at Morrison Construction, the biggest building company in Illinois. Within 3 years, she became the head of operations for the entire Chicago division. The money changed her. The power changed her. She moved to a luxury apartment in the Gold Coast, started wearing designer clothes, and developed this attitude that made my stomach turn every time we met. The first sign of trouble came 6 months ago when I started dating Mike. I met him at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue during a particularly brutal Chicago winter. I was grading papers, struggling with my laptop that kept freezing, when this guy at the next table offered to help. He had these gentle brown eyes and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. He fixed my computer in minutes, refused to let me buy him coffee as thanks, and asked if I'd like to walk around the Art Institute with him sometime. Michael told me he worked construction. He was part of a crew building a new shopping center in Oak Park. He lived in a small apartment in Pilsen, drove an old Ford pickup that had seen better days, and saved every penny he could. When he talked about his work, his eyes lit up. He loved building things, creating structures that would last for generations. He had this quiet confidence and treated everyone with respect, from the homeless man outside our favorite diner to the fancy executives he occasionally met on job sites. I fell for him completely. Michael had this way of listening that made you feel like the most important person in the world. When I had a rough day with difficult parents or struggling students, he'd show up at my apartment with takeout from this little Mexican place we both loved. He never tried to fix my problems, just held me while I talked through them. He made me laugh until my sides hurt. Most importantly, he made me feel valued for exactly who I was. But when I introduced him to Jessica at a 4th of July barbecue at our parents' house, the temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees despite the summer heat. She looked him up and down like he was something unpleasant. She'd stepped in. When Michael went inside to help Dad with the grill, Jessica cornered me by Mom's rose bushes. Seriously, Sarah, a construction worker? Her voice dripped with disgust. I mean, I know you're not exactly ambitious, but I thought you had some standards. Michael is a good man, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He's kind, hardworking, and he treats me well. Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, wake up. I manage hundreds of construction workers. They're all the same. Rough, uneducated, going nowhere in life. You're settling for scraps when you could do so much better. Better according to who? According to reality. She gestured toward the house where we could hear Michael laughing with Dad about some baseball game. Look at me. I have a career, a future, security. I date professionals, doctors, lawyer. You're going to end up in some trailer park, pregnant and poor, while that guy drinks beer and watches TV all day. Her words stung because I could hear the certainty in her voice. Jessica had always been the successful one, the smart one, the one everyone praised. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I being naive? Was I settling? But then I heard Michael's voice from inside, telling Mom how proud he was of the work I did with my students. How he'd never met anyone as patient and caring as me. The doubt vanished. Jessica might have money and status, but she didn't understand love. I'm happy, Jess, I said quietly. Isn't that what matters? She rolled her eyes. Happiness doesn't pay the bills, little sister. The real blow came 8 months later when Michael proposed. It wasn't fancy. We were walking along Lake Michigan on a Sunday afternoon in early October. The leaves were changing colors, and the lake looked like a sheet of silver under the cloudy sky. He stopped by our favorite bench, the one where we'd had our first real conversation about our dreams and fears, and got down on one knee right there. The ring was simple, a small diamond on a thin gold band. Later, he told me he'd saved for 6 months to buy it, working overtime whenever he could get it. When he asked me to marry him, his voice shook with nervousness. but his eyes were completely shut. Sarah, he said, I know I can't give you a mansion or fancy vacations, but I can give you everything I have, every day, for the rest of my life. I can give you my whole heart and a promise that I'll spend every morning grateful that you chose me. I said yes before he finished talking. I didn't care about mansions or vacations. I cared about waking up next to someone who saw the best in me, who supported my dreams, who made ordinary Tuesday nights feel special just by being there. When we told my parents, they were thrilled. Dad shook Michael's hand and welcomed him to the family. Mom cried happy tears and immediately started talking about wedding plans. They could see how happy he made me, and that was enough for them. Jessica's reaction was completely different when I called to tell her the news. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. You're joking, she finally said. No, Jess, I'm not. We're engaged. I'm really happy, and I hope you can be happy for me. Sarah, this is a mistake. A huge mistake. You're 26 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't throw it away on some construction worker who'll never amount to anything. His name is Michael, and he amounts to everything that matters to me. God, you're so naive. Her voice got sharp and angry. Do you have any idea what my colleagues would think if they knew my sister was marrying one of the workers? It's embarrassing, Sarah. You're embarrassing our whole family. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. Since when do you care more about what your colleagues think than about my happiness? Since I started living in the real world. Look, I get it. He's probably good looking, maybe even sweet. But Sarah, think practically. What kind of life can he give you? What happens when you have kids and his back gives out from all that manual labor? What happens when the construction industry has a downturn and he's out of work for months? We'll figure it out together. That's what couples do. No, Sarah. That's what poor couples do. Smart women marry men who can provide security. The conversation ended with both of us angry and hurt. Over the next few weeks, Jessica made her disapproval clear to everyone. At family gatherings, she'd make little comments about Sarah's situation or ask pointed questions about Michael's career prospects. She never said anything directly cruel in front of him, but her attitude was obvious. She treated him like he was invisible, or worse, like he was stabbed. Michael never complained, but I could see it bothered him. His jaw would tighten when Jessica made her snide remarks, and he'd go quiet for a while afterward. When I apologized for her behavior, he'd just squeeze my hand and say, Family's complicated, Sarah. Don't worry about it. But I did worry about it. Jessica was my only sister, my only sibling. Despite everything, I wanted her approval, her support. I wanted her to see what I saw in Michael. His integrity, his work ethic, his gentle strength. Instead, she seemed determined to make me feel ashamed of my choice. The worst incident happened at my engagement party. Mom and Dad insisted on hosting it at their house, even though the space was small and the budget was tight. They strung lights in the backyard and set up folding tables borrowed from their church. It was simple but beautiful, filled with people who genuinely cared about Michael and me. Jessica showed up late, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. She brought her current boyfriend, a surgeon named Dr. Bradford, and made sure everyone knew his title. Throughout the party, she kept making comparisons. Brad just bought a house in Lake Forest, she announced to anyone who would listen. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, with a view of the lake. Of course, he could afford something even bigger, but he's practical. When Michael's construction crew showed up to congratulate us, Jessica's behavior got even worse. These were good men, hard-working guys who'd become Michael's close friends over the years. They brought thoughtful gifts and heartfelt congratulations, but Jessica looked at them like they'd tracked mud through her pristine world. The breaking point came when she cornered me in the kitchen while I was cutting cake. Sarah, it's not too late to change your mind, she said, glancing toward the backyard, where Michael was laughing with his friends. Look around. This is your future. Backyard parties, with construction workers and their wives talking about truck payments and overtime shifts. Is this really what you want? Yes, I said firmly. This is exactly what I want. These people are kind and genuine. They care about each other. They work hard and take care of their families. What's wrong with that? What's wrong is that you're limiting yourself. You could do so much better, Sarah. You're pretty. You're smart when you try to be. You could marry a professional, someone with a real future. Michael has a real future. We have a real future. Jessica's laugh was cold and bitter. Wake up, little sister. In 5 years, you'll be living in some rundown neighborhood, struggling to pay bills while he's too tired from breaking his back all day to even talk to you. You'll have kids you can't afford and dreams you gave up for love. And you know what? Love doesn't keep the lights on. Her words followed me for days afterward, even though I knew she was wrong. Even though Michael proved every day how much he loved and valued me, Jessica's voice kept echoing in my head. She was successful, respected, financially secure. Maybe she saw something I was too in love to note. But then Michael would come home from work, tired but smiling, and tell me about his day. He'd ask about my students, remember their names and their struggles. He'd help me plan lessons and celebrate small victories, like when little Emma finally mastered reading, or when Marcus stopped acting out in class. He made me feel like my work mattered, like I mattered. Still, Jessica's disapproval cast a shadow over our engagement. Every family gathering became tense. Every conversation felt like a battle. Michael started making excuses to avoid family events. And I couldn't blame him. Jessica had made it clear he wasn't welcome in her version of our family. The tension reached a breaking point when we started planning the wedding. Mom wanted to host it at the church where she and Dad were married, a small Catholic church in our old neighborhood. Jessica immediately objected. You can't have the wedding there, she said during a family dinner in late October. It's so common. What will people think? What people? I asked. The people who love us. My colleagues, for one. I have a reputation to maintain. Sarah, some of the most important people in Chicago construction will be at that wedding if I invite them. So don't invite them, I said. This wedding is about Michael and me, not your networking opportunity. Everything is a networking opportunity when you're a professional, which you'd understand if you had any ambition. That's when Dad, who'd been quietly eating his dinner, set down his fork and looked directly at Jessica. That's enough, he said quietly. Sarah's found a good man who loves her. That's what matters. If you can't support your sister, then maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding at all. Jessica's face went white, then red with anger. Fine, she said, standing up so quickly her chair nearly fell over. But don't expect me to pretend this is anything other than a huge mistake. She left that night without saying goodbye to anyone. For 2 weeks, she didn't return my calls or texts. I found myself crying at night, not because I doubted Michael, but because I was losing my sister to her pride and ambition. Michael found me crying one evening and held me while I explained what was happening. He listened without saying anything, just stroking my hair while I talked. Maybe she's right, I finally whispered. Maybe I am settling. Maybe I'm being naive. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he took my face in his hands and looked directly into my eyes. Sarah, do you love me? Yes, of course I do. And I love you more than anything in this world. That's not settling. That's not naive. That's the most valuable thing two people can have. But what if we struggle financially? What if then we'll struggle together? Sarah, I can't promise you wealth or status symbols, but I can promise you that every single day, I'll wake up grateful for you. I'll work as hard as I can to build a good life for us. And when things get tough, we'll face them as a team. His certainty helped quiet Jessica's voice in my head. This was the man I wanted to spend my life with. This was the love I wanted to build a future on. Jessica's approval would have been nice, but it wasn't necessary for my happiness. Things took an unexpected turn 2 weeks later. Michael seemed nervous about something, distracted in a way I'd never seen before. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd smile and say he was fine, but I could tell something was bothering him. One evening in November, while we were having dinner at his apartment, he suddenly set down his fork and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Sarah, there's something I need to tell you, he said. Something I should have told you a long time ago, but I wasn't sure how. My heart started racing. Was he having second thoughts about the wedding? Had Jessica's words gotten to him too? Okay, I said carefully. What is? He took a deep breath and reached across the table to take my hands. My last name isn't just Morrison. It's Morrison, as in Morrison. Construction. I stared at him, not understanding. What do you mean? My father is William Morrison. He owns the company where your sister works. The words didn't make sense at first. Michael Morrison, the son of William Morrison, the billionaire construction mogul? It was impossible. William Morrison was one of the richest men in Illinois, featured on magazine covers and in newspaper articles about Chicago's most powerful business leaders. I don't understand, I said slowly. If your father owns Morrison Construction, why are you working as a regular construction worker? Michael's grip on my hands tightened. Because that's how my father learned the business, and that's how he wanted me to learn it too. He started as a day laborer when he was 18 years old. He worked his way up from the ground, learning every aspect of construction from the bottom up. He always said that to really lead people, you have to understand what their lives are like. I was still trying to process this information. So you're the heir to Morrison Construction? Yes. But Sarah, that's not who I am. Who I am is the guy who's been working alongside the crew for the past 3 years, learning how to pour concrete and frame walls and treat every worker with respect. Who I am is the guy who fell in love with a kindergarten teacher, who makes the world a better place every single day. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I wanted you to love me for me, not for my family's money. And because… He paused, looking almost embarrassed. Because I was afraid you might react the way most people do when they find out. I was afraid it would change things between us. I thought about all the times Jessica had mocked Michael's profession, all the snide comments about construction workers, all her certainty that she was so much better than both of us because of her position at Morrison Construction. The irony was almost overwhelming. Does anyone at work know who you are? I asked. Just my father and the head of HR. Dad thought it was important that I earn respect based on my work, not my name. The plan was always for me to gradually move into management, but only after I'd really learned the business from every angle. What about Jessica? She doesn't know. Michael shook his head. She has no idea. As far as she knows, I'm just another worker on one of the crews her division oversees. The full impact of the situation started to hit me. Jessica had been looking down on the heir to the company where she worked. She'd been treating her future boss like he was beneath her. But more than that, she'd been cruel to the man I loved. And now I knew that all her lectures about his lack of prospects were not just wrong but absurdly wrong. When were you planning to tell people? I asked. Dad wants to announce my transition to management at the company Christmas party next month. It's this big formal event where all the department heads and their families are invited. He's planning to introduce me as the future CEO and announce our engagement at the same time. My stomach dropped. Jessica will be there. Yes, she will. I could picture the scene, Jessica, confident in her authority and status, suddenly discovering that the construction worker she'd spent months mocking was actually her boss's son and her future boss. The thought should have felt like sweet revenge, but instead it just made me sad. This revelation would humiliate Jessica publicly, and despite everything she'd put me through, I didn't want that. Michael, maybe we should tell her privately first. I suggested. Give her a chance to… To what? Apologize for treating you terribly, for making you doubt yourself in our relationship. His voice was gentle but firm. Sarah, I've watched her hurt you over and over again. She's had plenty of chances to be supportive and loving, and instead she chose to be cruel. She's still my sister. I know, and I know you love her, but she needs to learn that actions have consequences. And honestly, after the way she's treated both of us, I think she could use a dose of humility. Over the next few days, I struggled with what to do. Part of me wanted to protect Jessica from the humiliation she was walking into, but another part of me, the part that had been hurt by her constant criticism and condescension, thought maybe she needed to learn this lesson the hard way. The decision was taken out of my hands when Jessica called me 3 days before the Morrison Construction Christmas party. Sarah, I need to ask you a favor, she said, her voice unusually warm. The company Christmas party is this Friday, and it's a really big deal. All the major clients will be there, plus William Morrison himself. I need to make a good impression. Okay, I said cautiously. The thing is, I'm supposed to bring a guest, and I just broke up with Bradford last week. I was wondering if you and Michael might want to come with me. I know things have been tense between us, but I've been thinking about what Dad said, and maybe I've been too hard on you. I was so shocked I almost dropped the phone. You want us to come to your company party? I know it's short notice, and I know Michael might not have appropriate clothes, but I could help with that. It would mean a lot to me, Sarah. A chance for us to start over, and for me to get to know Michael better. The irony was staggering. Jessica was inviting us to the very event where Michael's true identity would be revealed. She was trying to mend our relationship at the exact moment when everything she thought she knew about our situation would be turned upside down. I'll have to check with Michael, I said. Of course. And Sarah, I'm sorry I've been so difficult. I love you and I want you to be happy. If Michael makes you happy, then I need to accept that. When I told Michael about the invitation, he was quiet for a long moment. She has no idea what she's walking into, he said finally. No, she doesn't. Michael, maybe this is a sign. Maybe we should tell her the truth before the party. He considered this, then shook his head. Sarah, she's had months to treat us with basic respect and kindness. Instead, she chose to be cruel and condescending. This invitation isn't really about making things right with us. It's about her needing a date to look good at her company party. But let me ask you something. If I were actually just a construction worker, if there was no revelation coming, would she really be apologizing? Or would she just be using us for her own purposes and go right back to treating us badly afterward? I thought about Jessica's sudden change of heart, her offer to help Michael with clothes. Her timing, Michael was right. This felt more like Jessica needing something from us than Jessica genuinely wanting to repair our relationship. We'll go, I said finally, but I want you to know, whatever happens at that party, it doesn't change how I feel about you. Whether you're Michael the construction worker or Michael Morrison, you're the man I love. He kissed me softly, and that's why I'm the luckiest man in Chicago. The next few days passed in a blur. Jessica sent over a tuxedo for Michael that fit perfectly, along with a formal dress for me. She called twice to go over details about the party, telling me about the important people who would be there and coaching me on what to say if anyone asked about Michael's work. Just be vague, she advised. Say he's in construction. You don't need to get into specifics about him being a laborer. The night of the party, Michael picked me up in a car I'd never seen before, a sleek black BMW. Where did this come from? I asked. Dad thought the pickup truck might raise questions, he said, with a slight smile. This is actually mine. I just don't usually drive it. The Morrison Construction Christmas party was held at the Palmer House, Hilton, in downtown Chicago. As we walked through the grand lobby with its ornate ceiling and crystal chandeliers, I felt underdressed despite the expensive gown Jessica had provided. This was a world of wealth and power that I'd never experienced before. Jessica met us at the entrance to the ballroom, and I barely recognized her. She was wearing a stunning emerald green dress that probably cost more than I made in 3 months, and she was practically glowing with excitement. Sarah, you look beautiful, she said, hugging me warmly. Then she turned to Michael, and for the first time since I'd known them to be in the same room, she smiled at him genuinely. Michael, thank you so much for coming. You look very handsome. Michael accepted her compliment, graciously, but I could see the tension in his shoulder. He knew what was coming, and I could tell he was uncomfortable with the deception, even though it wasn't his fault. As we entered the ballroom, I was overwhelmed by the sheer opulence of it. The room was decorated with thousands of white lights and gold accents. Round tables covered in pristine white linens were arranged around a dance floor, each centerpiece a work of art. A live orchestra played softly in one corner, while waiters in formal attire circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvre. This is incredible, I whispered to Jessica. Morrison Construction spares no expense for the Christmas party, she said proudly. It's one of the most prestigious corporate events in Chicago. Everyone who matters in the construction and real estate industries is here tonight. She led us to a table near the front of the room, introducing us to her colleagues along the way. I watched their faces as she presented Michael, noting the slightly condescending politeness they showed when they learned he worked construction. It was subtle, but it was there. The brief pause before shaking his hand, the quick glance at his appearance, the immediate shift in conversation away from business topics. Michael handled it all with remarkable grace, answering their questions about his work honestly and without any hint that he was anything other than what they assumed him to be. When someone asked what kind of construction he did, he simply said he worked on commercial buildings. When they asked about his experience, he talked about the projects he'd been involved with. never mentioning that those projects were worth millions of dollars, or that his input on them carried significant weight. Jessica was clearly enjoying herself. She was in her element, networking and making connections, basking in the attention that came with being a department head at such a prestigious company. She introduced Michael and me as her family, but I could hear the slight apology in her voice, as if she was making excuses for our presence. About an hour into the party, the music stopped, and William Morrison himself took the stage. I'd seen pictures of him in newspapers and magazines, but seeing him in person was different. He was a tall man in his early 60s, with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention, without effort. When he spoke, the entire room fell silent. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate another successful year for Morrison Construction. This company has grown beyond my wildest dreams, but that growth would never have been possible without the dedication and hard work of every person in this room." He talked about the company's achievements over the past year, the major projects they'd completed, the awards they'd won. As he spoke, I glanced around the table and saw Jessica hanging on every word, her face glowing with pride at being part of this successful organization. "But tonight," William Morrison continued, "I want to talk about the future of Morrison Construction. As many of you know, I've always believed that true leadership comes from understanding every aspect of our business, from the ground up." He paused, scanning the room with his eye. "3 years ago, I asked my son to join our company, not in an executive role, but as a regular worker. I wanted him to learn our business the way I learned it, by working alongside the men and women who make everything we do possible." A murmur went through the crowd. I felt Michael tense beside me, and I reached under the table to squeeze his hand. "My son has spent these past 3 years working on construction sites, learning every trade, earning the respect of his coworkers through hard work and dedication. He's lived on a construction worker's salary, maintained a construction worker's schedule, and experienced firsthand the challenges and rewards of the work we do." Jessica was looking confused now, glancing around the room as if trying to figure out who William Morrison's son might be. I saw several other executives doing the same thing. "Tonight, I'm proud to announce that effective January 1st, my son will be taking over as Chief Executive Officer of Morrison Construction." William Morrison's voice grew stronger, more emotional. "But more than that, I'm proud to announce that he's recently become engaged to a wonderful woman who sees him for who he truly is, not for what his last name might bring him." The room erupted in applause, but I could barely hear it over the pounding of my heart. This was it. This was the moment everything would change. "Ladies and gentlemen," William Morrison said, "I'd like you to meet the future CEO of Morrison Construction, my son Michael Morrison, and his fiancée Sarah." A spotlight suddenly illuminated our table, and Michael stood up, pulling me gently to my feet beside him. The applause was thunderous, but all I could focus on was Jessica's face. The color had drained from it completely, and her mouth was hanging open and Michael raised his hand to acknowledge the applause, then spoke into the microphone someone had handed him. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady and confident. "The past 3 years have been the most educational and rewarding of my life. I've had the privilege of working alongside some of the finest craftsmen and women in Chicago, people who take enormous pride in their work and who have taught me that there's no shame in honest labor." His eyes found mine, and he smiled. "And I've been lucky enough to find a woman who fell in love with a construction worker, who saw value in hard work and integrity over status and wealth. Sarah has made me a better man, and I can't imagine running this company without her wisdom and support." The applause started again, but I barely noticed. I was looking at Jessica, watching her face as the full implications of the situation hit her. The construction worker she'd spent months mocking was not only wealthy beyond her imagination, he was also about to become her boss. The sister she'd looked down on for settling was about to become the wife of the CEO. But it was more than just the professional implication. I could see Jessica realizing that every cruel comment she'd made, every snide remark about Michael's prospects, every lecture about my supposed lack of ambition, had been witnessed by the one person who could make or break her career. As the spotlight moved away from our table, and William Morrison continued his speech, Jessica slowly sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking, and she kept looking back and forth between Michael and me, as if she couldn't quite believe what she'd just witnessed. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice so quiet I could barely hear her over the continuing applause. Is this real? It's real, I said softly. He's really William Morrison's son? Yes. And you knew. I found out 2 weeks ago. Jessica's face went through a series of emotions: shock, disbelief, horror, and finally something that looked like panic. I could practically see her replaying every interaction she'd had with Michael, every dismissive comment, every time she'd treated him like he was invisible or unimportant. The speech continued, with William Morrison outlining his vision for the company's future under Michael's leadership. He talked about expansion plans, new markets, and innovative approaches to sustainable construction. As he spoke, several executives at nearby tables kept glancing over at Michael with new respect and what looked like nervousness. When the speech finally ended and the orchestra resumed playing, people began approaching our table to congratulate Michael and introduce themselves to me. I watched Jessica throughout these interactions, seeing how she struggled to process what was happening. She'd gone from being one of the most confident people in the room to looking completely lost. After about 30 minutes of congratulations and networking, Michael leaned over to me. I need to talk to some of the board members, he said quietly. Will you be okay here for a few minutes? Of course, I said, squeezing his hand. Go do what you need to do. After he left, I found myself alone at the table with Jessica. The silence between us was heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke. How long have you known? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I told you, 2 weeks. And before that, you really thought he was just a regular construction worker? Yes, that's exactly what I thought, and it's exactly what he wanted me to think. Jessica was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Sarah, I I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Yes, I do. She looked up at me, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes. I've been horrible to you, to both of you. I said terrible things, and I was so sure I was right. You were protecting yourself, I said, though I wasn't sure I entirely believed it. No, I wasn't. I was being arrogant and cruel. Jessica's voice broke slightly. I was so proud of my position, so sure that I was better than everyone else, because I had climbed the corporate ladder. I looked down on Michael, because I thought his job made him less valuable as a person. She wiped her eyes carefully, trying not to smudge her makeup. And you, God, Sarah, the things I said to you. I made you doubt yourself, doubt your relationship. I tried to convince you that love wasn't enough, that you were settling for less than you deserved. Jess, let me finish. Please, she took a shaky breath. I was jealous. I was jealous because you found something real with Michael. You found someone who loved you for exactly who you are. And instead of being happy for you, I tried to tear it down because it made me feel bad about my own choices. I reached across the table and took her hand. What do you mean? I mean that every man I've dated has been about status, about what he could do for my career or my image. I've never had what you have with Michael. I've never had someone look at me the way he looks at you, like you're the most precious thing in the world. The tears were flowing freely now, and Jessica didn't seem to care about her makeup anymore. I convinced myself that was smart, that I was being practical, but watching you two together, seeing how happy you are, I realized I was just scared. Scared of being vulnerable, scared of loving someone more than I loved my career. It's not too late for that, I said gently. Maybe not, but it might be too late for us. She squeezed my hand. Sarah, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I need you to know that I was wrong about everything. Michael isn't lucky to have you. You're not settling. You found something beautiful and real, and I was too blind and bitter to see it. Before I could respond, Michael returned to the table with William Morrison beside him. Jessica immediately straightened up and tried to compose herself, but it was obvious she'd been crying. Sarah, Michael said, I'd like you to meet my father. Dad, this is Sarah. William Morrison smiled warmly and extended his hand. Sarah, I'm so pleased to finally meet you. Michael has told me so much about you. It's nice to meet you too, Mr. Morrison, I said, standing to shake his hand. Please, call me Bill. We're going to be family soon. He glanced around the table. And you must be Jessica. Michael tells me you're one of our department heads. Jessica stood up quickly, nearly knocking over her chair. Yes, sir. Jessica Miller. I head the operations division for the Chicago region. Ah, yes. Excellent work on the Oak Park project. I've heard very good things about your leadership there. Jessica's face flushed with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. Thank you, sir. I had no idea Michael was your son. That was the point, Bill said with a gentle smile. Michael wanted to earn his place in the company based on merit, not family connection. From what I understand, he worked on several projects under your supervision. Yes, he did. Jessica's voice was barely audible now. He was an excellent worker, very dedicated. I could see the conflict playing out on Jessica's face. She was trying to reconcile the Michael she thought she knew, the construction worker she'd looked down on, with the reality of who he actually was. But more than that, she was realizing that her treatment of him hadn't gone unnoticed. Well, Bill said, I should let you folks get back to enjoying the party. Jessica, I look forward to working with you as we move forward with Michael's transition into leadership. After he left, Jessica sat down heavily, her face pale. He knows, she whispered. He knows how I treated Michael. Jessica, Michael said, sitting down across from her. His voice was calm but serious. We need to talk. She nodded, not meeting his eyes. I know, and I know. I need to apologize, but I don't even know where to start. Start with why, Michael said simply. Why did you treat us the way you did? Jessica was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. Because I was scared, she said finally. Scared that if Sarah made different choices than I did, it would mean my choices were wrong. What do you mean? I've spent my entire adult life climbing this corporate ladder, sacrificing relationships and personal happiness for career success. I convinced myself that was the smart thing to do, the practical thing. But then I watched Sarah fall in love with someone who made her genuinely happy, and it made me question everything. She looked directly at Michael for the first time since the revelation. I told myself you weren't good enough for her because admitting you were good enough would mean accepting that maybe success and money aren't the most important things in life. Maybe love and kindness and genuine connection matter more. And now, Michael asked, now I realize that I've been so focused on climbing the ladder that I forgot to actually live my life. I have a great job, and a beautiful apartment, and an impressive salary, but I don't have what Sarah has. I don't have someone who loves me unconditionally. Jessica's honesty was surprising and heartbreaking. For the first time since I'd known her as an adult, she seemed vulnerable and real instead of polished and perfect. Jessica, I said gently, it's not too late to change how you approach relationships. Maybe, but it might be too late to fix the damage I've done to ours. She looked at both of us. I was cruel to you, Sarah. I tried to make you doubt yourself and your choices. And Michael, I treated you with disrespect and condescension for months. Michael considered this carefully. Jessica, I'm not going to pretend that your behavior didn't hurt Sarah, because it did. It hurt her deeply, and that was hard for me to watch. I know. I'm so sorry. But, he continued, I also understand that family dynamics are complicated, and I can see that you're genuinely remorseful. I am, more than you know. Michael looked at me, and I could see he was asking for my input without words. I thought about everything that had happened, all the hurt and anger and disappointment, but I also thought about the Jessica I'd grown up with before corporate success had changed her. Somewhere inside this polished, ambitious woman was still my big sister, who used to help me with my homework and defend me from playground bullies. I think, I said slowly, that we all need some time to process what's happened tonight. But Jessica, if you're really serious about changing, about being the sister I remember instead of the person you've become, then maybe we can work on rebuilding our relationship. Relief flooded Jessica's face. I want that more than anything, Sarah. I want to be someone you can be proud to call your sister. I've always been proud to call you my sister, I said. I just haven't liked you very much lately. That got a small, sad smile from Jessica. I haven't liked myself very much lately either. Michael stood up and extended his hand to Jessica. Why don't we start over? He said. Hi, I'm Michael Morrison. I'm engaged to your sister, and I love her more than anything in the world. Jessica stood and shook his hand, tears streaming down her face again. Hi, I'm Jessica Miller. I'm Sarah's sister, and I owe you both a huge apology. Apology accepted. Michael said. But Jessica, there's something else we need to discuss. What's that? Your position at the company. After everything that's happened, I think we need to make some changes. Jessica's face went white. Are you firing me? No, Michael said firmly. You're good at your job, and the company needs good people. But there are going to be consequences for how you've treated people you perceived as being beneath you. I understand. Because this isn't just about how you treated me. This is about your attitude toward all the construction workers, all the people you manage. If you've been condescending to me, chances are you've been condescending to others. Jessica nodded slowly. You're right. I have been. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to be moved to a different position, one where you'll be working more closely with our construction crews. You'll be responsible for job site safety and worker relations. It's an important role, but it will require you to actually listen to and respect the people doing the hands-on work. Is it a demotion? It's a lateral move with different responsibilities. Consider it a chance to learn something new and maybe gain some perspective. Jessica was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I deserve worse than that, honestly. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Don't thank me yet. You'll need to prove that you can change, not just apologize for past behavior. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and congratulations. I watched Jessica throughout the night, seeing her interact with people differently than she had before. She was quieter, more thoughtful, less concerned with impressing people, and more focused on actually listening to them. As the party wound down, the three of us found ourselves alone at our table again. The orchestra was packing up, and the waitstaff was clearing away champagne glasses and appetizer plates. So what happens now? Jessica asked. Now we go home and try to process everything that's happened, I said, and then we figure out how to move forward as a family. What about the wedding? Jessica asked tentatively. Am I still invited? I looked at Michael, who nodded. Of course you're invited, I said. You're my sister. But Jessica, I need you to understand something. This wedding isn't going to be the fancy society event you probably think it should be now that you know who Michael really is. What do you mean? I mean, we're still getting married at the little church in our old neighborhood. We're still having the reception in Mom and Dad's backyard. Michael's wealth doesn't change what we want for our wedding. Why not? Michael answered this time. Because that's not who we are. Yes, I have access to my family's money. But Sarah and I fell in love when she thought I was a construction worker living paycheck to paycheck. We built our relationship on simple pleasures and genuine connection. We don't want to change that just because the financial circumstances are different. But you could have anything you want, Jessica said, seeming genuinely confused. We already have everything we want. We have each other. We have the support of people who love us. And we have the promise of a future built on shared values. What more do we need? Jessica stared at us for a long moment, then shook her head in amazement. You really mean that, don't you? Completely. I think, she said slowly, that I have a lot more to learn than I realized. 3 months later, on a bright February day with snow sparkling on the ground, Michael and I got married in the same little Catholic church where my parents had exchanged vows 30 years earlier. Jessica was there, wearing a simple navy dress instead of her usual designer outfits, helping Mom arrange flowers and making sure all the guests felt welcome. The guest list was exactly what we'd always planned. Family, close friends, Michael's construction crew, my fellow teachers, and neighbors from our old neighborhood. But now there were also some new faces. William Morrison and his wife, some of Michael's college friends who'd flown in from other states, and even a few Morrison construction executives who'd become genuine friends over the past few months. What struck me most about the day was how natural it all felt. Despite the revelation about Michael's background, despite the changes in Jessica's attitude, despite everything that had shifted in our lives, the wedding felt exactly like what we'd always envisioned. It was about love and commitment, and the joining of two families, not about status or wealth or impressing anyone. Jessica gave a speech at the reception that brought everyone to tears. She talked about learning the difference between success and happiness, about the importance of family, and about how watching Michael and me together had taught her what real love looked like. I spent so many years thinking that my sister was settling for less, she said, looking directly at us. But I was wrong. Sarah didn't settle. She found something that money can't buy and status can't provide. She found someone who sees her exactly as she is and loves her completely. And Michael didn't just win the lottery when he met Sarah. He recognized something precious and fought to protect it. She paused, wiping away tears. They've both taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be earned or achieved or bought. They can only be given and received with an open heart. I'm grateful to my sister and my new brother-in-law for that lesson, and I'm grateful for the chance to be part of their love story. As I listened to Jessica speak, I realized that the events of the past year had changed all of us. Michael had learned to navigate the complex world of corporate leadership while maintaining his values and integrity. I had learned to trust my instincts about love and to value my own judgment over other people's opinions. And Jessica had learned that true success isn't measured by salary or status, but by the quality of our relationships and the depth of our character. The construction crew gave us a handmade wooden chest as a wedding gift, carved with intricate details and lined with soft velvet. For all the love letters you're going to write each other over the years, one of them explained with a grin. William Morrison's gift was different but equally meaningful. He'd established a scholarship fund in our names for children of construction workers who wanted to pursue higher education. Michael's right, he told us. The people who build our buildings deserve our respect and support, and their children deserve every opportunity to pursue their dreams. But the most touching moment came when Dad pulled Michael aside during the reception. I watched from across the room as these two men, one who'd worked his whole life with his hands in a steel mill, the other who'd inherited a construction empire but chose to learn it from the ground up, shook hands and then embraced like father and son. Later, as Michael and I danced our first dance as husband and wife to an old Elvis song the DJ had found, I looked around at all the people who'd gathered to celebrate with us. There was Jessica, laughing as she danced with one of Michael's crew members who'd asked her to the floor. There were my parents, glowing with pride and happiness. There was William Morrison, deep in conversation with my former principal about the importance of supporting public education. What are you thinking about? Michael asked, noticing my distraction. I'm thinking about how different this day could have been, I said. If Jessica had succeeded in convincing me to doubt us, if you'd given up on our relationship because of her behavior, if we'd let other people's opinions matter more than our own feelings. But we didn't, he said, spinning me gently. We trusted what we had, and we fought for it. Do you ever regret not telling me the truth from the beginning? Michael considered this. Sometimes I wonder if things would have been easy, but then I remember how it felt when you said yes to my proposal, knowing that you were choosing me based on who I was as a person, not what I could provide financially. That moment was worth every difficult conversation and every awkward family dinner, even Jessica's behavior. Because look at her now, Sarah. Look at how she's changed, how she's grown. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can build themselves back up into someone better. I looked over at Jessica again. She was helping clean up cake plates and chatting with my elderly aunt about her grandchildren. She seemed genuinely interested in the conversation, asking questions and listening to the answer. This was a far cry from the woman who used to check her phone during family gatherings, because she was too important to give us her full attention. She's trying so hard, I said. She is. And you know what? I think she's going to be okay. The job change has been good for her. She's learning to see construction workers as people instead of just labor costs. And that's changing how she sees everything else too. Over the past few months, Jessica had indeed thrown herself into her new role with surprising enthusiasm. She'd implemented new safety protocols based on input from the workers themselves, organized recognition programs for outstanding craftsmanship, and even started a mentorship program, pairing experienced workers with new hires. The change in her had been remarkable to watch. She asked me yesterday if I thought she could start dating someone from outside the corporate world. I told Michael. She said she was tired of relationships that felt more like business partnerships. What did you tell her? I told her that the best relationships happen when you're not looking for them, when you're just being yourself and living your life authentically. I think she's finally ready to do that. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Jessica approached us one more time. I have something for you, she said, pulling a small wrapped box from her purse. I know you said you didn't want wedding gifts, but this isn't really a gift. It's more like a promise. I unwrapped the box to find a simple silver bracelet with a small charm shaped like a heart. It was Mom's. Jessica explained. She gave it to me when I graduated from college. Said it was supposed to bring me happiness and help me remember what really mattered in life. But I think she meant for it to eventually come to you. Jess, I can't take this. Mom gave it to you, and now I'm giving it to you. Sarah, you've always understood what Mom was trying to teach us. You've always known that love and family and kindness are more important than money or status. I lost sight of that for a while, but watching you and Michael has helped me remember. I fastened the bracelet around my wrist, feeling the weight of family history and renewed connection. Thank you, I said, hugging her tightly, for this and for everything you've done to make things right between us. Thank you for not giving up on me, she whispered back, for giving me the chance to be better. As Michael and I drove away from the reception that night, heading to a small bed and breakfast in Wisconsin for our honeymoon, I reflected on the incredible journey that had brought us to this moment. A year ago, I was a kindergarten teacher in love with a construction worker, facing opposition from a sister who thought I was throwing my life away. Tonight, I was Mrs. Michael Morrison, married to a man who'd chosen love over convenience and authenticity over expectations. Any regret? Michael asked as we drove through the snowy Chicago suburbs. Only one, I said. What's that? I regret that it took so long for Jessica to figure out what I knew all along. Which, that you're extraordinary, not because of your last name or your bank account, but because of your heart. Because you treat a kindergarten teacher like she's the most important person in the world. Because you spent 3 years working construction, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to prove something to yourself. Because when you love someone, you love them completely and without reservation. Michael reached over and took my hand, the simple gold band on his finger catching the light from the street lamps. Sarah Morrison, he said, trying out my new name. I like the sound of that, I said. Good, he replied, because you're stuck with it for the next 60 or 70 years. As we drove into our future together, I thought about all the lessons this experience had taught us. I'd learned to trust my own judgment and not let other people's opinions shake my confidence in what I knew to be true. Michael had learned that sometimes the hardest thing about having wealth and privilege is knowing when and how to reveal it without letting it define you. And Jessica had learned that real success isn't about climbing higher than everyone else, but about lifting others up as you rise. Most importantly, we'd all learned that love, real, honest, authentic love, is worth fighting for, worth protecting, and worth celebrating. It doesn't matter if that love happens between a kindergarten teacher and a construction worker, or between a kindergarten teacher and the heir to a construction empire. What matters is that it's genuine, that it's built on mutual respect and shared values, and that it makes both people better versions of themselves. The snow continued to fall outside our car windows, covering the familiar streets of Chicago in a blanket of white. Somewhere behind us, Jessica was probably cleaning up the last of the wedding decorations and thinking about the new life she wanted to build for herself. Somewhere ahead of us lay years of marriage, challenges and joys, ordinary Tuesday nights and extraordinary celebrations. But right there, in that moment, driving through the city where we'd fallen in love, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. And that was all I'd ever really wanted, someone to share the journey with, someone who saw me as I truly was and chose to stay. Everything else, the money, the status, the vindication of being right about Michael all along, was just bonus. The construction worker I'd fallen in love with was still there, still the man who'd offered to fix my laptop and asked me to walk through an art museum with him. He just happened to also be Michael Morrison, future CEO, and my husband. But in the end, the name didn't matter nearly as much as the man who wore it, and the love we'd built together one honest conversation at a time.